Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to this workshop this evening. We still have a few people joining us. Welcome, everybody. Okay, yes, again, welcome to this live workshop with Charlene Carey, author of Biology for Senior High. We have some interesting things to share with you this evening. And I hope that you can stay with us for the entire time, because we also have some special bonuses at the end to share with you for those of you who will still be on the call. And while we're waiting though, if you can just put in the chat, let me know where you're located, which island you're on right now. I'm in Grand Bahama. I'd love to know where you guys are right now. If you can just put it in the chat. Okay, so Charlene is in New Providence. Asia, you're in New Providence as well, and Nadia, welcome, welcome. Christian, you're in Grand Bahama, welcome Christian. Anaya, also in Grand Bahama, welcome. All right, everybody, so we're going to officially get started, and Charlene is going to share a lot of information with us. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type it in the chat, and then we'll do our best to address it near the end. Okay, so feel free to type your questions in the chat. There are no silly questions. Now is the chance to get your questions answered. Charlene is filled with information that can help you pass your exams. And I'd like you to, while we have her on the call, to really take advantage of it. That's what she's here for today, to share with you. Okay, and also, like I said, there is a special gift for those of you who remain with us until the end. You'll get a chance to take advantage of that, and we'll deal with that after the questions. Okay, so welcome, Charlene. I met Charlene in 2018 when she reached out to me regarding her book, Biology for Senior High. And it just so happens that thanks to Charlene reaching out to me, I was able to find a way to accommodate her book on the Student Shed, and it opened up opportunities for me to work with other creators as well who have resources for you, like answer keys and study guides. And so that's what has made us what we are today. Thanks to her reaching out, just planting that seed of opportunity, even for other people, so that you guys can take advantage of it. So I'm very grateful for that, Charlene. And I will give you the stage right now, so you can share with us. And welcome, Charlene.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. Let's see, from the beginning. I'm assuming you can see my screen. I see one thing in the chat. Oh, we have a science teacher here in Nassau, teaching grade 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so you guys know why you're here, and you can see on my screen this emoji that says, that means I want you to be thinking so that you can ask questions, right? Scientists are curious people, and we need to ask questions so that we could grow, right? And so I want you to put on those thinking caps. Tansy already mentioned, if any question comes to you, just plop it in the chat. So who am I? So my name is Charlene Carey, and I'm from Trinidad originally. My husband is Bahamian. I've been living here for 29 plus years. And for the most of that time, I've been in education, or for all of that time, I've been in education. So I taught science at St. John's College for 11 years. So I taught biology, chemistry, general science, combined science, and health science, right? I love science. My degree is in microbiology and biochemistry, right? So I really enjoy science. And then after St. John's, I moved on to BREEF, Bahamas Reef Environment Educational Foundation, where I was the environmental educator, office manager, grant writer, etc. So you can see me down here in the water. Sometimes if you're looking at ZNS, before, during the COVID times, when the prime minister would come on, they'd throw on some video from a long time ago with teachers in the environment, learning about the environment. And so I might see me in those videos. At Brief, I produce lots of their educational materials. Since 2014, I've been working for myself. I'm self-employed. One of the things I do is I'm an author, right? So author of biology of senior high, but I'm also, as a consultant, I work on different projects. You may have heard of Character Day Bahamas and our Hidden Heroes program. I'm the coordinator for that. But even from the time I left St. John's, to now, I've been tutoring students, right? So I still live and breathe biology every day. It's my love. So I want to launch another poll. It's who's in the room, right? Who's in the house? Who's in the Zoom room? So I want to know what's your role, because this can help me to, with what I say, know who I am speaking to, right? So here I have the choices of parent, student, teacher. All right, I see there are 21 people in the room so far. I have responses from 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe half of you. So I see 8 teachers so far, 3 students, 1 parent. All right, the numbers are climbing, quite a few teachers. All right, so teachers, still 1 parent, 5. So I am going to end this poll and show me your results. So clearly I have lots of teachers in the room. So several of you might know me from my life at Brief before if you're a science teacher. All right, great. Thank you so much for participating. So first I want to talk about as a student, right? As a teacher, we are faced with challenges. And part of overcoming those challenges is the type of mindset that we have, right? So sometimes somebody will say, I want to do something. Are you the person who says, I won't do it, I can't do it? Or the person who says, I think I might, I can, I know I can do it, right? So the way that you approach a challenge, and success in biology certainly can be challenging, and any other subject area has a lot to do with your mindset. So as a scientist, if you're a scientific thinker, part of your mindset is about being curious, right? So scientific thinkers look at phenomenon in the world and wonder, why did that happen, right? How can we explain this, right? So if we look back at COVID, what people are getting sick and dying. Why are they dying? Okay, so then they figure out, oh, it's a virus. Now, next question, how can we cure them? Right? So during COVID, we were seeing science and biology happen in real time. So we question things, we seek evidence, and so we come up with answers. And so people who are curious and ask questions often have a love of learning, right? So sometimes we ask kids, so why are you in school? Why are you in class today? And people say, because I have to pass, I have to do well. I have to do well. I want to have X, Y, and Z career. But to me, the number one thing is it's for yourself and for your own personal growth, right? For you as a person to be able to live your best life, right? So we learn about things around us every single day. I think I learn something new every day. Another approach, when we sorry, but there we go. As we talk about mindset, we say your mindset impacts your success. Do you have a fixed mindset or growth mindset? So let's take a look on the screen. We see some of the characteristics of a fixed mindset, some of the characteristics of a growth mindset. Now you can be fixed in one area and have a growth mindset in others, right? So for me, something I need to work on, I have a fixed mindset when it comes to sports. I think I can never do it. I can't catch, I can't throw, I have no coordination, right? But clearly, if I were to try, I would be able to improve, right? So with a growth, someone who has a growth mindset embraces challenges. School is as a challenge every day. Someone with a growth mindset thinks, instead of thinking it's too hard, they say, you know what, with practice, I can get better. Someone who has a growth mindset looks at effort. The work that you're doing is the way to mastery, right? To doing it really well. You don't need to be rewarded by somebody else because your reward is intrinsic, it's inside. I am building me, I love me, and I'm going to care for me and nourish my spirit, nourish my soul, nourish my mind. And so they like to get feedback. You know, sometimes we don't like people to, when we look at it as criticize us, right? But we like to get feedback because this helps us to grow, right? So somebody points out to you, these are your weaknesses, these are the areas that you can improve, and you use that feedback to improve. And therefore, you look to people as mentors, others who are successful and say, oh, wow, that student got 13 A's in BGCSE. How did they do that? Right? That's inspirational rather than looking at it in a competitive way. So with a growth mindset, what the first thing that we realize is there's always going to be failure. Nobody's going to do something fantastic 100% of time, right? And so when we think of fail in a different way, failure leads to growth. The word fail, the letters, we could use it to say first attempt in learning, right? So when you do something and you get it wrong, your brain goes, why did I get that wrong? Let me try something else. You might get it wrong again. Say, so I tried that and it didn't work. Let me try something else, right? So getting things wrong is the way that we grow, right? So oftentimes we have students who are afraid to fail, right? Afraid to answer a question in class or ask a question in class because they don't want to ask what people will say, oh, you're asking a silly question. There's no such thing as a silly question. Trust me, somebody else has a question, but that question might help with your understanding. So go ahead and ask. Don't be afraid to fail. And then lastly, the last thing about growth mindset is one way to approach it is looking at the power of yet. So if you get something wrong, I can't do this yet. If you stop with, I can't do this, your brain shuts down. You add the word yet, and then your brain says, oh, there's something that I can do to improve, right? So we're going to go forward in your academic journey with a growth mindset where you realize that practice brings mastery. So I've had many years in education, 25 plus, almost 30 years of teaching. And through this experience, I developed first a textbook called Biology for Senior High. It has a similar name to Chemistry for Senior High. And I think it's General Science for Junior High, Science for Junior High by Neverlet Pierce, because she's one of my mentors. And she's like, yeah, use this name pattern that I have for my book. We work well together, right? And so she's like, I want to support you. Use this name for name recognition. So our Biology for Senior High textbook that came out officially in 2020. I started in 2018. And then my workbook, which has been released this year. So what made me write a textbook? My kids, well, they finished college a few years ago, but they did biology as well, right? And my personal students, and I was also, my personal children, sorry, I'm also a bio teacher, right? So I've seen the challenges that biology brings. It's a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot, it's a huge curriculum. So there are many topics to cover. So students find it difficult to manage and teachers find it difficult to complete everything. There wasn't a textbook before that had the entire course. So schools will have multiple books, right? Or have to create lots of handouts to give to students that students would lose by, if you give me a handout in grade 10, by grade 12, can't find it. The curriculum is supposed to be skills-based. So if you have so much content, the teachers are struggling to provide, to have enough time for students to do fun activities or activities that really bring about learning, right? Do solve problems, etc. So that is just a picture of all the skills that they want students to develop as they study biology and the sciences. And so ideally, class time should be spent developing those skills. Then I realized also that a lot of students were having difficulty reading the traditional textbooks, right? The language was complicated. There was a lot of extra stuff you didn't need to know, right? Or it was hard for them to pick out what is the information that I really need here. And so I thought that if I produce a book that students can read easily and engage with easily, that's connected to the curriculum, it'll improve their understanding. If they understand the material better, they're better able to communicate, be more fluent in communicating it. And then once they're able to communicate, now you can use that information to solve problems, which is where we develop the skill, develop the scientific skills, right? So be able to solve problems and to make, to reason, right? To develop solutions. And then what I found in recent years is that lots of students are not paying attention to the world around them. So if I'm teaching about forests, have you ever seen a gamalame tree? No, right? Because what we're doing, and I don't want to say students alone, I myself am on my device all day, I don't know, playing Toontown and Candy Crush and looking at social media, right? Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're looking at. And so it puts you, your world is now in a device rather than observing what's happening around you. And so it's hard to connect with biology if you're not paying attention to the natural world. And then I found that students who got A's in other subjects got C's in biology. And part of it, a huge part of it, I think, is because biology requires strong language skills. So not only math, but language skills. So I was like, okay, if I make a book that has everything in it, teachers are going to have more time to provide fun, enriching activities, problem-solving activities for their students in class, rather than have you write in notes, etc. And then that's going to make it easier for the student to master the concepts. I understand it because I'm learning by doing rather than just learning by hearing it or seeing it, right? And then as students use these books, if it's written in a way that's easy to read and follow, then it encourages the students to be motivated, to be independent learners. That's something that I want to see. Students as independent learners, where you don't have to wait for your teacher to say, open the book to page 5, right? You know we are doing cells today. So you look in your table of contents and find cells, right? And you're following along in the book. And I'll give you some other tips for that. So of course, the textbook, really brightly colored so that you can't lose it in your book bag or lose it in your locker, right? It really stands out. So that's a very friendly cover, aligned to the curriculum. That's tables of contents, index, what you need to find things. Also in the back of the book, your coursework helps. So how you go about doing the different skills. Also, how you write up a lab report. It's very tight, so it's concise. It has the exact information that you need, which makes it pretty easy to read. Now, one of the features that I think is pretty important is that at the beginning of each unit, you have the objectives so that students know what they need to be able, they know what they should be able to do or know by the end of a particular unit. This is your study guide, right? So it also allows you to hold your teachers accountable. If you're a student, say, but miss, we didn't cover why to explain how growing crops to feed a population is more energy efficient than rearing animals, right? So it keeps everybody on track, not only the student, but the teachers as well, right? And in the book, the extended objectives are bolded, in bold. So you see there are 3 of them here, bolded. Some more features. You have a study checklist, exam technique, practicals, write a lab report, how to design an experiment. Then building on this is my COVID baby, right? So while we were on lockdowns, I was putting together this workbook, and which further built on what the textbook was doing. So, and the purpose of this is for students to practice, to assess themselves. Okay, do I really understand this concept, right? And so in the book, you will find 69 worksheets on different units, but there are different types of questions. Some are graphing. There's questions where you do reading comprehension. There are diagram questions. There are design experiment questions. There are calculations questions, right? So you have a range of different question types in order to practice the different scientific skills that you need for mastery of the content. And then I enhance the whole front section is helping how to help students and how teachers can help students to master biology. So you have your study tips, command words. What does define mean? What does explain mean? Scientific vocabulary. So if you see a strange word, photosynthesis, what does photo mean? What does synthesis mean? Oh, I put it together. Light, making something. You're making stuff from light, right? So I've tried to put all the tips that I use as I tutor students and teach so that I can help everyone. Most importantly, question guidelines, how to tackle different kinds of questions, whether it's comparison, design an experiment, draw a graph, etc. Right, so it's one thing to know the content, but you have to practice, right? And so this is why teachers give assignments. This is why we have, exams are tests after you've practiced. So the workbook is an opportunity to practice, right? Excellence is an art, is not an art. It is the habit of practice. So how did Shawnee Miller-Weebo get to be such an excellent runner? She did a lot of work, right? A lot of work with training and practice, right? It doesn't come overnight. The book also covers topics that are sometimes excluded from the traditional text, especially concerning Bahamian stuff. So we have Bahamian ecology, Bahamian protected areas, how to use different field equipment. So you'll find everything there. Here we have a testimony from Christopher Knowles. He got the best BGCSE results last year. He's a student of Queens College. I think he was in grade 11. He should be graduating this year. I met him. He himself is an author. He and his brothers are authors, and I met him as he was donating a book to the Bahamas National Trust. So when he heard my name, he's like, Charlene Carey, I know that name. I use that bio book. And I was like, yeah, that's my book. He's like, oh my gosh, that book is so awesome. It had exactly what I needed to do my past papers, to study, etc. I do your book from back to front, right? So that's a testimony from Mr. Knowles. So I call these two books together a toolkit. So as a teacher, if you're using these books, I encourage you to use them each lesson so that it becomes a habit for the students, right? And as a student, even if, this time of the year, parents are buying books for students, and the parents are like, why am I buying another book and you didn't open it at all? This book brand new, the book I gave you from last year. So students, a word of advice. Even if your teacher doesn't say open the textbook, your textbooks are there as a resource for you, right? So I encourage you to open the textbook and move along as you're going through the lesson, right? Even if it's at home, as you're going through the lesson, right? And the way it's designed, you have a learning framework, right? So it's a structure. So you have the objectives. I know what I need to know. I know what I need. This is what I need to know. Headings give you a clue. Okay, this is the main chunks of information. Bold text, I've bolded things, important keywords, key concepts, definitions, diagrams, etc. to help you. So I have organized it in a way that makes finding the information easier. And then the workbook is a practice and assessment tool. So even if you aren't using my textbook, you can use the workbook, right, with any textbook to check to see, do I understand this particular concept? Can I get the answers? So as we go now into looking at what are the specific things that we need to do in biology, on the screen, I have some 4 strategies that speak to how we learn in general. Number 1, challenges, right? Challenges, challenging experiences. So we don't want the work to be super easy, because if it's easy, you already know it. You didn't learn anything, right? So you need something to be challenging so that you stretch your muscles of your brain. The brain doesn't have muscles, but you know what I mean? The brain cells, you get things going so that you create new connections, right? And build and grow as a student, as a teacher. And then you need to practice, right? So here's where the workbook comes in. There's where doing past papers come in. Conversation. So if you're in a study group and you're explaining something to another student, so you say, okay, I'm going to learn about X, you learn about Y, and we're going to explain it to each other, right? In class, during class time, teachers might have cooperative learning strategies where they put students in groups and have students speak or write so that you can show what you understand. And then, of course, you want time to think about it. So let's say, for example, if you do a test at school, when you get that test back, you don't just ball it up and throw it in the bottom of your bag, right? That's the time where you say, okay, I got this right. Okay, I understand why I got it right. I got this wrong. Where did I go wrong? Let me go check and see. The teacher will go over the work with you, right? Let me check to see, I didn't understand this. How can I clarify what I was thinking so that I don't make that mistake another time? All right. Okay, just checking in the chat. Hi to those newcomers. So here are some tips. My first tip, I'm really, really sorry to tell you, but you got to study. Okay? Bio is a lot. Do not wait until the last moment, right? You have to, so you've been doing it for 3 years or whatever. It's a lot of information. I'm not going to pretend that it's not a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and you have to study. How do you know what to study? You use your syllabus, or your teacher might give you a course outline. You use the objectives at the beginning of the chapter, so you know what you need to study. Then you chunk the material into manageable bits. And what's manageable for me is what might be is different to what might be manageable for Ms. Lewis, right? So some people need to do smaller sections. Some people could take a big section. So again, the objectives can help you. So I do, okay, I'm going to do 3 objectives today, and tomorrow I'll do 2 more for this section. All right, I understand that, right? And hold yourself accountable. You're going to, as for students, I'm speaking to you, you're going to school for you, not for the teacher, not for mommy, not for daddy, right? So you are responsible for your own learning. Your parents and your teachers are there as facilitators to help you understand what you're doing, right? So make sure that you know what needs to be covered, and you review it and make sure you understand it. Ask questions. Now, one way to use a text that I find very helpful, and that we often only do in like literature, when you're doing plays and whatnot, the literature teachers ask students to annotate, write in the margins information about it. This applies to all subjects, right? So this is a picture here showing scribbles around the place. My books look like craziness because I have scribbles that make sense to me, not necessarily to anybody else. So what does this involve? Adding short notes, so additional information, comments, explanations. So there may be a diagram, and then your teacher might say, oh, give you information about it that's not necessarily there. Like, oh, okay, I'll make a small note in my own handwriting. So when you annotate, it helps you to identify important material, such as the main information, right? So in the book, those main key concepts are bolded or under a heading, but sometimes there's a section in there that you want to highlight, right? So it could be highlighting a small space, writing an underline, making a note in the margin. It helps you to follow along, right? So you're following the information in your book. And then when it's time for tests and exams, you have everything organized in a way that makes sense to you. You have identified the main things. And so when it's time, and you understand the concept, so when it's time for the test, you just kind of like skip through the main things that you highlighted to make everything fresh to you. And it can be easier to do than create a set of notes. So I like to think of my books almost as notes because it's so concise. So all you need to do is to add on to that, right? So using my book in particular, because it's so concise, as your notes. If you're using another textbook, you're using the annotations that come with it, or you could also make your own like study notes if that works for you. Everybody is different. So key things in annotation, circling, you put things that are in a list. So you might have bullet points. What are the factors that affect the rate of photosynthesis? They might just be listed: light intensity, carbon dioxide concentration. If there's no numbers, put numbers next to it: 1, 2, 3, 4. And so your brain triggers, oh, there are 4 factors. What are they again? So it helps you to recall, right? So number things, connect ideas with arrows, right? So there's a diagram, you might draw from the steps or whatever, the bulleted numbers, to a diagram to show that they're connected, right? So you kind of have to make it yours. There's no right or wrong way to annotate, other than to say, don't underline every single thing and don't highlight the whole page, or else you won't know what you're looking at, right? So in some cases so sometimes students highlight a whole paragraph. Instead of doing that, you could just put brackets around it. All right, so now that we know how to use a textbook so that you get the best experience, then you're like, okay, I've studied the information. Now it's time to practice, right? So practice being, you could use my workbook, you can use past paper questions, you could use questions at the end of any textbook, right? So the first thing is follow instructions. Can I say that again? Follow instructions, right? You'll be surprised, okay? Now with the follow the instructions, you need to know what the common command words mean. What is the difference between define and explain? What's the difference between list and explain, right? Just name a few, right? So you need to know what they mean, because the questions would usually say, account for the blah, 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 blah. Contrast monocotyledons and dicotyledons. So you have to know what those words mean to start off with, right? So you'll find those in the book. And then you need to read carefully. I can't tell you how many times I tell my students this. Number 1, read the whole question before you start. So questions that look like this, that are structured, that have multiple parts, read the whole question. And important is read the question stem. So up here I see number 1, the diagram shows a mangrove creek that opens into a bay. You have to read that because it sets the stage for your thinking. Many students just jump to the questions themselves, you know, I don't know what all that fluff is up there, but it sets the stage for thinking, right? The diagram shows a mangrove creek that opens into a bay. So right now your brain say, okay, what topic is this? Wetlands, right? And so it starts to download the information you have about that. So you mentally link the syllabus to the question, right? You think about the topic. Then your next job, before you go further, is to figure out what is going on in this diagram, right? Is there anybody who would like to unmute and describe to me what's going on in this diagram? Put your hand up, raise your hand if you'd like to do so. All right, I see Azaria Wilson. Azaria, could you unmute and describe to me what's happening in the diagram? Azaria.
In the diagram, I believe it's pollution.
Mm-hmm. Be more graphic for me. Tell me everything you see.
I see the water being polluted with oil. I see factories polluting the air with carbons. And I believe that's algae growing, algae from the crops and the fertilizers going into the water.
Good. What process is that? I'm putting you on the spot here, boy. Because since you tell me all that algae fertilizers going into the water, what does fertilizers cause when it goes into the water?
Is it? I believe I remember learning this. I think it was percolation.
Close. Eutrophication, right? So percolation is when water, something goes through the soil, right? To percolate means to pass through. So like when you're making coffee, you know, the water goes through the coffee ground. So we say you percolate it, right? So this is eutrophication is when you have fertilizers, sewage, things with nutrients that cause algae to grow, right? So you're seeing a whole bunch of stuff there. Thank you so much, Azaria. You see illegal dumping. So clearly the question must be about pollution, right? So you figure that out. So if you read the stem, analyze the picture, you know what's going to come next, right? Clearly they must be going to ask you, look at that, Azaria and friends. What's the difference between pollution and pollutant, right? The diagram shows illegal dumping. So if you pay attention to the diagram and the stem of the question, it helps your brain to recognize what topic it is and therefore to start downloading the information that you need, right, in order to answer the questions. All right, so your prediction was pretty close there because you said pollution, right? And so to help you with your question, we talk about this some more later on, is to underline key words. All right, the next strategy, think while you're reading. So as you read, just like how we had that diagram as a visual image of what was happening and Azaria described it, if you don't have a diagram, when you're reading text, you want to create a movie in your head, right? So you're creating a movie. So just like if you read a novel, right? You need to read a novel about some fantasy fiction, somebody with a bow and arrow chasing down a villain, and you see that happening in your head. The same thing happens, the same thing should happen when you're reading a textbook, right? It's information. Create a movie so you can have a good picture of it, right? So in this question on the screen, we see here, it says you have noticed that your backyard garden is producing less fruit and vegetables than it did last year. And you're wondering what you can do about it. So in your head, you see somebody in the garden looking at their fruit and vegetables like, why they so scrunchy? Why they so scrawny, right? I only getting 2 tomatoes, right? So you could see that happening in your head, right? And so they did some research. So now you see them, maybe they're Googling something. Why are my plants making less fruit? And then they're going to ask the farmer, right? So you see them going to the farm and then you say, okay, I wonder what they will ask the farmer, right? So as you're reading the question, this happens quickly. When we're talking out loud, it seems slower, right? But it happens quickly in your head. So you visualize, and then while you're visualizing, you're going to ask yourself questions to understand what's going on. So questions would be like, why is it producing less fruit? What do I know about that? And then your brain say, oh, fruit need nutrients in the soil. Maybe you shouldn't add any fertilizer or compost, right? So you think it and so maybe what would the farmer tell her? I tell her, hey, add compost to your soil, right? And so you use what you read and what you know based on your life, right? You must see plants growing somewhere. Grammy might have a garden, right? So what you know about your norm of your regular life, your life experience, what you read or you learned about, and then you could come up with an inference. You say, suggest what the organic farmer told the person whose garden wasn't growing well, right? So you use all the information that you have, information you learned in other subjects, right, to support what you're going to write. So when we talk about making an inference, we're talking about make a conclusion based on some kind of evidence. So here's the difference between an observation and inference. Observation, the boy crying, see it, the boy hurt, there's a red thing on his knee. So now you make an inference. You say, oh, he's sitting on the ground. So maybe he fell down and hurt himself. So same thing goes with the biology question. It says the plants weren't growing well. So I know that plants don't grow well if they don't have fertilizer. Therefore, I could say my inference would be that there weren't enough nutrients in the soil. You can add fertilizer. I see Sophia Butler, but get me that eutrophication. I'll like it. All right. So we have that question, the same question. So then we said, so as you're reading, you kind of know, if you know your syllabus, you know what questions they're going to ask. It shouldn't be a real surprise, right? So they could ask things. For here we see, what's the difference between biodegradable and non-biodegradable? Here we have questions talking about acid rain, biomagnification, eutrophication, right? So if you know what topic is coming, you could kind of predict what they might be going to ask you. And so if you really know your subject matter, this gets, as you know better, this gets easier and easier. Tip 3, simplify questions. So if you struggle with reading comprehension or with understanding what on earth these bio questions asking me, sometimes they could really seem really confusing. You want to simplify your answers. To get an A or a B in BGCSE Biology, you have to do paper 3. Paper 3 has a section B that you have to do 2 full questions of, and these are free response kind of questions. So they aren't lines to write on, right? You have to write the answers on line paper, right? But first thing is, to get the full marks, you have to understand what the question is asking you to do. So in order to do that, you underline or circle keywords. If you know it's something you struggle with. Students who don't struggle with this, they could just read it and figure it out, but you have to know yourself, right? So this is telling us to what? Distinguish between what, right? So you're focusing, okay, I have to tell the difference between biodegradable and non-biodegradable. And I have to do something else. Give one example of each, right? So here's our 2 points. Your 4 points for the question. What is biodegradable? What is non-biodegradable? And an example for each one, right? So these are your 4, you come up with your 4 points. So sometimes highlighting the keywords will help you answer the question that was asked, if you know you have challenges in that area. Or you might need to simplify a complex question, right? So this says the devastation caused by hurricanes in the Bahamas often causes wetlands to become polluted with raw sewage and crude oil. Explain how pollution with raw sewage leads to eutrophication, and explain the consequences of eutrophication for wetland ecosystems. That's a serious mouthful, right? So you could say, okay, let me simplify it. What is it asking me? I need to say what eutrophication is due to sewage, and they want me to talk about its impacts, right? So practicing simplifying the question can help you answer what was asked. Then to get full points, sometimes you need to figure out how to elaborate. So something is 5 points, 8 points, 6 points, 10 points. Your first thing, you need to refer to the marks awarded. So they say, okay, it's the same question. They want me to give, they want me to make at least 5 points, right? When you make those points, you want to include things like, so it depends on the question, right? So sometimes it may be a definition. So eutrophication is blah, 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 blah. Then it happens by this process. Some examples of things that could cause eutrophication will be fertilizer, sewage. Explain how it happened. There are some questions where you have data to reference. So in this question here, they showed how body temperature of two organisms, a mouse and a snake, changes, right? As the environmental temperature changes, right? So as environmental temperature changes, what happens to the body temperature? And it asks you to explain with evidence shown on the graph, right? So you may sometimes need to make references to the data. So you say, for example, at an environmental temperature of 10 to 40 degrees, the mouse's body temperature remained at 40 degrees Celsius. However, the snake's body temperature increased as environmental temperature increased. For example, this is how you're referencing data. At 10 degrees, the snake's body temperature was approximately 10. At 30 degrees, it was approximately 30, right? So you're using data, references, you identifying the data, showing that you understand what you're talking about. Some questions want you to give your opinion. That's when you have to use the information that you learn and the information, the experiences in your life to answer the question, and then make suggestions, right? So you're not only using what you learned in class, but everything that happens in your life. And sometimes you also have pros and cons. Then we have those unfamiliar questions. When students come out of the exam, oh my gosh, my teacher didn't teach this, blah, 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 right? And then everybody's in an uproar. I know you all experienced that, right? So for example, last year there was a question about biotechnology, which is producing, what is this, yogurt. And so a lot of students were like, oh my God, I never heard about this, I never heard about this. But if you really read the questions, even if you didn't do that before, you could have figured it out using your regular, your knowledge of enzymes, your knowledge of fermentation or anaerobic respiration in yeast and bacteria and whatnot, right? So when you see these things, you're like, you have to think about your syllabus and say, you know what, it's something we had to learn. Then you identify what that topic is. So in this case, anaerobic respiration, microbes in food production. You visualize what's happening as you read it. You figure it in your head. Use context clues to help you connect to what you know personally, right? So you heat up the milk. Why are you heating it? Okay, you're going to kill bacteria, right? And that helps you to answer questions. I think this is the last strategy, writing. So this is the key now. I understand all the stuff, but how do I express it so that the examiner gets the same meaning that I intend to give, so that I communicate what I need to communicate accurately? And this is where we have tend to have a lot of issues. To do this, we need to, one, use scientific terms correctly. You only get to use it if you practice using them. And as you are reading, do not ignore any word that you don't understand. So I've had students say, okay, this is the question. I was like, okay, do you know what genetically modified means? No. So then why did you ask a question? Right? So that's what questions are for. Do not let, do not let anything you don't know pass you. Ask the question, Google it, figure it out somehow. Back in my day, there was no Google, so it was harder to figure out things. So we had to go to the library, go to the encyclopedia, etc. But you all are fortunate. You can find information at just a few clicks away. And make sure you know these words before the exam. You will only experience them if you practice, right? So you use a workbook, you do past papers, you have to do the work so that when you get to the exam, you are prepared. Build your vocabulary. So if you come across words that are unfamiliar and you know what they mean, start using them in regular everyday life, right? Your friends might tell you, why are you showing off? So, but that's all right, you practice it. All right, and try to be concise. That means answer the question as in the least amount of words as possible. All right, there's somebody we need to get to mute. All right, so use short sentences. So like you're thinking of everything you're writing as a bullet point. So the example I have here is evaluate the use of kidney transplants and dialysis, 6 points. So then I would, as a student, I'll think, okay, how am I going to get these 6 points? So I could provide 6 comparisons, but maybe I don't know 6 differences and similarities. So maybe I could add on that with a conclusion to get my 6 points. So I'll say 5 comparisons and a conclusion, right? So you want to think of how you're going to get each of these points, but use short sentences. Use linking words like whilst. Here's it. Transports provide long-lasting treatment whilst dialysis provide short-term. So it helps you to connect those two ideas. Do not be vague. It and they, your examiner don't know what it you're talking about or who they is, right? So here are some examples of connecting words that you can use, right, regularly as a result of this. Therefore, but, however, right, to help you with your writing. The same things they taught you in English language. So this is a passage that may have been corrected by students. So you use short sentences. So we see here in purple, a short sentence. Don't run on, because sometimes when you run on, you contradict yourself. Use nouns, not they. Who is they? The transplant patients. Be specific. Must take, if you put drugs, what kind of drugs? Immunosuppressant drugs. What is the effect? So here we have, these drugs affect transplant recipients. I see that all the time. But guess what? You didn't tell the examiner anything, right? How do they affect them? Do they suppress their immune system? Do they make them more likely to get infections? What is the effect, right? So don't write this thing affects this without saying how it affects it. Use linking words like therefore, and you can state both sides of an argument by using words than or but or however, right? So don't be vague, be specific so that you can communicate accurately. And the easiest way to compare two things is to create a table. So we could write out a paragraph, and I know for me, it's really difficult to handwrite things now because I'm so used to typing. So writing out a paragraph in an exam, like you have to change things and make errors. So like I find it's easier to share things that we're making a comparison as a table. Thank you, Kevin. All right. And so the last thing is organize your answer. So here we have a question, question 5, part A, part B. B has 2 parts, B1, B2, part C. C has 3 parts. When you answer the question, you want to answer it in its parts because the examiner is not going to search all over the place for your answer. You need to have the answer right there where they could see it. No ifs, ands, or buts, right? So 5A. 5A, you write the answer for 5A. B1, B1, B2, etc., 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 so that your answers are readily accessible to whoever's marking the exam. All right, and as you read biology, you want to consider themes that recur, right? So in science, the science in general, we look for patterns. Is something increasing, decreasing, or staying the same? So how does light intensity affect the rate of photosynthesis? As light intensity increases, the rate increases, right? Cause and effect. I put sewage in the water, there was a bunch of algae, right? So the cause is the sewage. What's the effect? We have eutrophication occurring. How does the size of one thing compare to the other, right? So when we look at microscopic things, bigger things, and change. If something changes in a natural system, there's usually some action to counteract that. So your blood sugar goes up, something happens to bring it back to normal, right? So these are some of the themes. You hear about adaptation all the time, how something is suited for what it does, how energy and matter flows. And we need to realize that things are interrelated. So even though we're learning about things separately, so we learn about the respiratory system separate, then we learn about the cardiovascular system or circulatory system separate. We learn about the digestive separate, the kidney and stuff separate, but they are connected. So you need to start seeing connections. So when you inhale air, oxygen diffuses from the air in the alveoli into another system, into the circulatory system, right? Nutrients that you digest are absorbed into the circulatory system. The waste that your tissues make diffuse into your blood and then go to the kidney to be removed, right? So all these parts are connected. So you need to start looking for how things are connected. So sometimes you'll have an exam question that starts talking about osmosis, and then they're talking about cells and enzymes, or some other topic at the end, right? So you'll find more than one question in a topic. All right, and then read and edit your work. So when you write your work, you need to read it over to say, number one, did I communicate accurately? For example, this sentence in green, the frog is in the box versus the frog is on the box. The only difference between them is one letter, but it means two completely different things, right? So the words are important. So you need to be careful what you are writing. Look for grammatical errors, of course, that might affect how you're using words incorrectly, like the wrong word. For example, urine, urethra, urea, urethra, they all kind of look the same. When words are like that, you need to clearly understand the difference between them so you don't use them inaccurately. Make sure you're using your scientific concepts and know all the terms in the question. So is it, am I listing, etc. Now, one way to stay on target is to use the information in the question. So it says, suggest one visible change that will occur at point X on the plant stem. So to stay on point, to stay there, you don't say it will bulge, say point X will bulge out, right? So you're use the language that they gave you to help you to answer the question, and that helps you to stay on target, right? And of course, you have to write in a way that could be read. It should be legible. Now, we are at the end, basically, and I'll soon take questions, but one of the giveaways that Ms. Lewis is going to talk about when we get to the end is that I have some paper 5 guidelines. It's not in any of my books yet. I created this over when the pandemic, when kids were working from home, and so they couldn't go into school to do coursework. So they had to do alternate to coursework. So it outlines what are some of the things they are looking for, what are some of the practicals that you need to be able to describe, some of the lab exercises you need to describe. So even if you're not doing paper 5, it's information you need to write papers 1 and 2 as well, right? Because these are the experiments that you need to be able to interpret, describe, etc. So that's your giveaway from me for today, and I think there may be some others. So we got to study. We have to find a way to manage our anxiety and stress as we are studying. And so I just want to give you a few tips for doing that. I saw this a lot of my students, like they were like, oh my God, crazed by the end of the year. So sometimes in class, I say, okay, let's just slow down and take some deep breaths. If you breathe slowly in, hold it out, it calms you. When you breathe out, it calms you down, right? You know, like when you stress out, even or in pain, you go, oh Lord, that hurted me. Because that's your body's natural way. Your breath is free and natural. It's your body's natural way to calm you down. So take a few slow, deep breaths, and that'll help to settle you. If you have exam anxiety, you get into the exam and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember anything. Calm down and it'll come to you. As you study, set goals, get in a routine, meditate. This could mean different things to different people. Whether you pray, take alone time, do yoga, just sit quietly, go out for a walk, find something else to relieve stress. So we all have multiple talents. So let's see, what earrings am I wearing? These, I don't think these are earrings that I made. No, they're not. So I like to do crafty things, so I can do that to relieve stress. Avoid multitasking. right? When we're trying to do 100 things, we do 100 things quarter way instead of one thing well, right? So try to do one thing at a time, get enough sleep, and of course, eat properly, exercise, that sort of thing, right? So that you can be able to handle the inevitable stress that comes with it. So my books are available. Both books are available at Book World in New Providence, Nassau Stationers, and Deep South Bookstores in New Providence, as well as Media Enterprises. But in Grand Bahama, I don't have the book in a bookstore as yet. But it's, if you know somebody in Nassau, they can purchase it from you. And then the textbook is available as an ebook on the Students Shed. It's, I believe, $20. And you might be getting some discounts for attending this. And then the last thing I want to draw your attention to is, what do you do when you want to study biology? The world is open to you, right? You could get into the health and medical field, industry, right? So where you create products that involved biology, whether it's foods, microbiology, you're making vaccines, right? That's biology. You could be into research and academia, professor at a university, a teacher in the public school system. You could work in conservation, right? So there are lots of areas that you could explore as you go into biology. And I just want to share a few on local Bahamian entrepreneurs that have biological backgrounds, right? So we have a young guy, Lincoln Deal. He is one of my past students, actually. So he started a business, Eden Farms, where they're growing crops in containers, because we have an issue with farms outdoors get damaged by hurricanes, etc. So they're using hydroponics, and they have grow lights and stuff inside there and producing produce. You can become a consultant when you become an expert in your field, so people hire you to do different things, whether it's environmental impact assessments or it runs the range. This is the Grow Food Lab, where they've created a certified kitchen so somebody who wants to like be a caterer, but they don't have the facilities at home, they could use their facility to prepare for events. We have Bahamian mermaids, right? Lindsay is actually a marine biologist by training, right? But she does this as a side gig to make money because she's a great swimmer and she knows a lot about the ocean. I don't know if you guys watch Shark Week, week before last or last week, maybe week before last, where we had our very own Andre Musgrove headlining the Shark Dome, one of the Shark Week shows, right? He's an expert free diver. He's a marine photographer. So he's using what he knows about biology to make money. I'm just hoping somebody signs him up to be the next Aquaman or Black Panther. Okay, he is so awesome. We've had Crystal Ambrose, who she spearheaded the whole plastic bag ban. She just came out with a book, right, called Kai and the Gaia, Discover of the Jaya, talking about ocean pollution and stuff, right? So she has a book that's in bookstores around the world. We have local entrepreneurs that are teaching people how to do bees. We have people who set up nonprofit organizations like YME and Cat Island Conservation Institute, right? These are all things that local young people are being innovative and making careers from this for themselves in biology. And lastly, this says it all, right? The illusion of the iceberg. You know, if you're in a ship, a cruise ship, and you go to Alaska, you see icebergs. What you see is just the tip. The majority of it you can't see, that's under the water. So we see somebody, oh my gosh, they did so well. They got so good in their exams. They did so good at sports. But there's a lot of stuff that people don't see, what they home do it, right? And so if you want to be successful, you got to be putting in the work, right? Hard work, developing the good habits. You're going to have to deal with failure and disappointment, but it's how you deal with it. You say, you know what, I'm going to get back up and try something else, right? So with that, I'm going to end my long spiel and entertain any questions. So I hear, where can I find the biology book? So you can find it at the Student Shed online if you want an e-version of it. Otherwise, you can buy it at Book World on Mackey Street, Nassau Stationers on Chesapeake Road, Deep South Bookstore at the Town Center Mall, and Bethel Booksellers in Grand Bahama. How much is it? On the book shed, it's on the book, sorry, the Student Shed, it's $20, but I think y'all might get a little something, something. And in the bookstores, it's anywhere from maybe 55 up. I have no control over how much they sell it for. Ms. Lewis has put the link to the textbook in the chat, so if you could access that. The workbook, I know that Book World has it for $31.50 or something like that. It's 200 pages of all sorts of things. So, so the textbook is in color, so it's a little bit more expensive, but the workbook is pretty affordable, $25, $30 at Book World. If you're a teacher and you're interested in using it at your school, you can reach me at, I'm going to put my cscarey2. My email is cscarey2@gmail.com. And my number is 359.0809. And that's for teachers or administrators who are thinking of using it at their school. Do I have any more questions? Where can I have the book? Right, I see people saying, oh, they could take all the help that you can get. All right, so any more questions? All right, if not, thank you so much for taking the time on your Wednesday evening. I know we have some nice weather. I hear and rain, and oh, I see Azaria's hand is up. I don't know if it's up from before. We have some rain and a thunder, so it might be a nice time to go and relax in your bed and watch a movie. So thanks for giving me sharing your time with us.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you do tutoring?
Yes, I do. So you can take my email and my phone number if you want to reach out to me. You see it in the chat? Okay, beautiful. Anybody else? That's a question. Thank you very much. It was very comprehensive. Much appreciated.
Good evening, Ms. Carey. How are you?
I am good.
I was wondering, for the teacher side, does this contain all information from grade 10 all the way to grade 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome.
And any school that uses, so like has the workbook on your book list, I provide an electronic answer key to the teachers, not the students. Sorry, students.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, so I turn it back over to you, Tansy.
All right, I see we have, okay, Joan Knowles, great presentation. It definitely was. Thank you very much, Charlene. Those were some really good nuggets. Did you guys enjoy the presentation? If so, you can let Charlene know. You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just let her know whether or not you enjoyed it.
And can I say one more thing? And so those tips are in the front of the workbook, right? So the first chapter, oh, this darn blurring thing. Anyway, so yeah, oh, there we go. Oh, no. Okay, so at the front of the workbook, the first section is Mastering Biology. That has all those tips that I spoke of.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'd like you guys just to put it in the chat. Let me know, I guess, one takeaway that you got from this presentation. Just one takeaway. Let us know what you got from it. Charlene was nice enough to take her time and share all those great nuggets with us. Just let us know what you got from it. Also, like I said, we do have a special gift for you guys. Yeah, Joan said the importance of reading. Yeah, that's good. Anaya, you like the steps for studying. Yeah, that's good. The tip on simplifying the question was great. That's what Shante said. Yeah, that's definitely important. I appreciated that part, especially great tips for school, Isaiah. Bernie said explaining key terms. Azari said if you want to be successful, you need to work hard. Right, exactly. Yeah. I like the way she said fail means, yeah, first attempts in learning. Yeah, that's the acronym, exactly. It doesn't mean the end.
Can I give a little example of that?
Sure, sure.
So when I was at St. John's, I had these two students who came to us from Korea. When they came, they spoke only Spanish and Korean, but they came to our school in grade 10. And let me tell you, those two children left with, they did BGCSEs and they did so well. Whenever so they were learning English as they were doing it. If you corrected that student, so you know, you do a test, you write, you make corrections, wrong word, you know, you use a different word, and you give them correction, you would never see that error again, ever. They focused on, okay, what did I get wrong? Okay, I need to do that differently next time. That's the most amazing example I've ever seen of that. I mean, they took every piece of advice to heart and put it into practice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that we have a wide variety of audience here. You know, we have parents, teachers, and students. So no matter who you are, you know, the teachers, I'm sure you got nuggets to share with your students. The students, you got nuggets directly from the mouth, from the horse's mouth. And then, you know, even parents, like I'm a homeschool parent, so I definitely appreciate it as extra guidance when working with my students as well. So thank you again so much, Charlene. And thank you all for taking the time to be here. And as a special thank you, we have a bonus. I'm going to share my screen with you. So we have a few bonuses for you, actually. Let's see. All right. So firstly, the Biology for Senior High book. This is the ebook version of Charlene's book that's on the student shed. Like she said, the price is $20. For those of you who are interested, for the next week, we're going to discount this for you at 20%. I'll put the discount code in the chat. It's 20 off biology. I'll just put it in the chat once I'm done with the screen recording, the screen share. And then also as an extra bonus, we have the BGCSE Biology answer book. This one has 200 mixed multiple choice questions and answers. This one you just automatically get 100% off. We're just gonna throw this in and give this to you. I have a coupon code for this one as well, which is 100 answer key. I'll put that in the chat. And then Charlene mentioned the guidelines for paper 5. It's a 5-page document that gives you lots more tips and guidelines for this paper 5, which is the alternative to practical. Whether or not you're taking paper 5, this is still information that you would benefit from. And so you get this when you purchase her Biology for Senior High book. So we'll just throw that in as an extra for you. All right, so I'll put the discount codes in the chat.
I put it in the chat. I don't know if they have spaces.
Okay.
Do they have spaces?
No spaces.
No spaces, right? So I didn't put
Yes, so it's 20 off Biology. Thanks, Charlene. That one is for her book, and 100 answer key. Yeah, that's for the answer key book. So you have a week. You have a week to use these codes before they expire. I really appreciate you all coming here, joining us. And that's about it. So thank you again, Charlene and everybody. And I guess I will see you all in the next workshop, whenever that is. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me and for supporting me through my journey as an author.
All right. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Good evening.
All right.
Good evening.
All right, take care.